All right. Hello. I'm just going to wait for a second for folks to join in, and we'll get started. So just give it a minute or two. Or maybe even less than that. Let's see here. All right. Okay. So I think we have some folks joining in. So hello there. Thank you for coming in. Hi, Jennifer. How are you? Okay, so today I'm going to do something a little bit different. The first half, I'm going to show you an artifact, a couple artifacts because they're really cool and I really want to show them to you. The second part, I am going to talk about preserving family heirlooms, and I'll tell you why in a second. Oh, hey, Tracy. Hey, James. And so I'm going to do something a little bit different today, so it'll be kind of cool. So let's dive right in. Let's go right in. The first thing I want to show you, and this is really, really cool, is I want to show you these. Okay, let's see if I can pull this out. Okay. All right. What do we have here? Okay. What do we have here? This is George III English flatware that belonged to James Monroe. And boy, the lighting in here doesn't do it justice, but they're absolutely gorgeous pieces. These are a dessert set, and they have silver here. These are sterling silver. And they have mother of pearl handles. And in fact, let me show you the fork part of it. The three-pronged fork here. Okay. And these are about 1805. These were made by Samuel Pemberton in Birmingham, England, and he was a silver maker. And excuse me, I'm knocking this here. And Birmingham was a good center for this sort of thing. You see a lot of good craftsmanship coming out of that area. And James Monroe, he was actually a diplomat over in England, and at one point, and he would have been aware of this center. So this one, if you can see here, beautiful mother of pearl handle, has the ferrule right here. Can you see that? A nice beautiful ferrule con up here. And then little maker's marks. But I wanted to show you this because these are these are especially interesting. If you see that, you see the English, you see the griffin that's on there? Can you see that? Okay. So the griffin was a symbol of Clan Monroe, and that was something that was used from time to time in Monroe. And you can see the sort of the stamps that's going on here. And you're looking at these, you're like, okay, well, what are all these stamps? What is this? What's actually happening? And I'll tell you what they are. This to me is kind of amazing. I actually printed out a print of the various. I took my little nerd magnifying glass and did a close-up of the stamps. And I guess these are reversed on the camera there, unfortunately. But I'll explain to you what they actually are. So if I hold this up here, and even though it's reversed, you can see that it has all these different stamps. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 different stamps on this single piece. And what are they? Well, the first one you have the Birmingham mark, okay? The Birmingham 1805 mark. And what that means is that's basically telling you the date of the piece. So that's telling you how old this thing is and what the actual date is for that. And then you have the Birmingham town mark. So this second part is the Birmingham town mark that actually tells you where exactly it was made in England. So it had to stamp that on there. And then you had the English duty mark, which, obviously is, a very prominent government stamp that would go on the English silver. And then you have the English sterling silver mark. Okay, so this is interesting because it's really hard sometimes to tell whether an artifact, what kind of silver it is. Is it silver plate? Is it pure silver? What it is? Well, this tells you right here. This says this is sterling silver, which means it's 92.5% silver. So you always hear about sterling silver. Why? Well, sterling silver was 92.5%, and it is to this very day. And then, of course, at the very bottom, you have Samuel Pemberton's mark, where he marked that on the craftsman for himself, which what I think is amazing about that is really interesting is all these marks are on this one piece of this one knife. There's actually a whole set of them. There's a 24-piece set. These are all on one on one blade, and each single I'll bring out another one. Each single one has these marks on them. So if you're looking at these, right, they all have the same marks. So think about the bureaucracy of that. And so each piece had to have these sterling silver marks so that they can regulate the silver, they can regulate the trade. And what did the great Bones McCoy from Star Trek said? The one constant in the universe is the bureaucratic mentality, right? Well, here's historic proof that he was right. So Bones from Star Trek was right. Here you go. And then these ones are a little bit tinier. They don't have quite as many marks on here. But, you can still see, I don't know if you can barely do this, still see there's a couple marks on each one of these, and each one of these forks has the same thing. What is something that's also interesting about this is that the quality of these pieces are pretty good. They're pretty high, right? Monroe was himself a humble guy, but that doesn't mean to say that he didn't want to have at least some kind of decorum and presence in quote unquote upper class society, and this is a good example of that. When you think about the handle is mother of pearl. What is mother of pearl? Well, mother of pearl comes from seashell, right? From the shell, right, of the oyster, right? So it's coming from the actual shell itself. So if you think about it, look at the size. Let me see if I can get this piece out here. Look at the size of this handle. This is one solid piece of mother of pearl. And so therefore, and it's not curved, right? It's flat. So therefore, the oyster itself would have had to have been a pretty massive piece. It would have had to have been a pretty massive shell to pull this out of. These days, whenever we see mother of pearl, a lot of times it's really, it's tiny small pieces or synthetic or something like that. Not back then. This was the whole shebang. So that was a pretty good piece. What they would do is they would hollow out the inside of this, right? After they would grind it down, they would shape the blade first. They would get the blade pretty much shaped to where they want it to be. And then, they would drill a hole down into the middle of the mother of pearl after it shaped itself. And then they would insert the tang. So this blade itself has a tang that goes down to about here. And, well, maybe more about here probably. And then they would insert it down into there, and they would affix it with some kind of glue. Nowadays they would use like probably two-fold epoxy or something like that. Back then there was various glues that they would use. They did have glue back then, and they would affix it to here. This one is not riveted. You see a lot of blades that are a lot of knife and fork handles that are riveted. You can just see the little rivets in there. They do that a lot today. This was not. This was just placed in there, and also you could see that they. It's probably hard to tell. This is getting super nerdy, but you can see that this is not exact. This wasn't shaped after they inserted it into the blade. This part wasn't shaped after because this is round, right? And this is, I think it looks like, I think it's a hexagon. I think there's six sides to it, if I'm not mistaken there. And so if this was shaped after they would go in, like a lot of modern knives are, then you would see that on here, and you don't see that here. So this was shaped before it was put in, and it was inserted right on in there. So it's kind of interesting. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to talk to you today about, and this is going to be a little bit different, is I wanted to talk about preserving family heirlooms. And the reason for that is because I get a lot of questions and a lot of requests, especially lately, from folks that are home, they're quarantined, and they're doing home projects. Like maybe they're going through old photo albums, or they're going through chests in the attic, and they find something that's kind of cool, and they ask, well, how do you preserve these things? What do we do? And that's a wonderful question. What do you do? I'm going to tell you. First off, I'll say that there are various levels of preservation. You talk, if you have a lot of money and you're doing like massive conservation works, Smithsonian level, that's one sort of level, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about what you can do at your home, yourself, with just the stuff that you have. Let me show you an example of something that, we have here at the museum. This is Monroe's music box. And this is really well preserved. This is actually a custom box. And this is something that you probably, maybe would not invest in or worry about investing in if you have other, other things to do. But I wanted to show you sort of the higher level of conservation or preservation. It's a custom box that's made to fit exactly here. Can you see that? So there's even another piece on the inside. This is all inert material. So that means that there's not going to be any off-gassing from chemicals, things like that. And then if I open this up, you can see where it is. It's just a nice, this is Monroe's music book, actually. And maybe I could show this in more detail in a different live, but here I can open this up here, and you can see some of the. Just get very carefully. You can see some of the music that's in there. But anyway, I wanted to show you this specifically, and I can talk about this in another live, but I wanted to show you this specifically because this is a custom job, you know, this is custom made, and but that's something that maybe you may not want to invest in. It's like, okay, so what can I do? Well, if there's certain sort of basics that you could follow in your house if you want to preserve family heirlooms. One basic is light. Right? What is your main enemy? Your main enemy, usually and typically for many, many artifacts, is going to be light. That's going to be one of the main enemies. Do an experiment. Take a newspaper, right? And take your newspaper and put it in your car, and then place a book over that newspaper and leave it for a day. Just leave it for one day. Go in the next day, take that book off, and you're going to see an imprint from where the paper has lightened up versus where the book was covering it. And that's sort of an accelerated version of what light does to artifacts. So what does that mean? Well, what it means is you want to keep it as far away from light as possible. As I said, there's extreme versions of that, you know, putting it away in different storages. However, if you have a piece of furniture that's particularly important to your family, but you want it out, you want to show it out, you don't want to hide it in the storage thing. Well, okay. What you can do is you try to keep it away from the windows if you can in your house. I know that can be a little bit problematic sometimes whenever whenever you're with your particular decorative layout. But if you can, try to keep it away from open windows. If you do have open windows, something that you can very easily invest in that's really not that harmful is there's actually UV protectant sheets that you can get from companies. So there's a company called Gaylord that actually does museum artifact supplies. You can get those. You can also get a lot of these things from your local framer, and I'll talk about that in just a little bit. But you know, these UV protectants that you put on your windows, you don't have to put them over your entire house, but maybe the window that's right in front of that old piece of furniture. And I'm telling you, it sounds silly and it sounds like kind of like picky, but it really will help preserve. It will go that extra mile and help preserve. Because the thing is with artifacts and with any family heirloom that you have, as museum curators, you know, there's no magic button. It's right now, and at this point in history, there's no science that completely freezes the degradation of artifacts, right? Maybe someday there will be. Maybe someday there'll be an electrical energy beam that, I'm not kidding, maybe it will, that will, you know, hit onto the artifact and just completely coat it and protect it for all time, and it'll be frozen in time. But right now, it won't. And even the most well-preserved artifacts, eventually, with current technology, are going to degrade. But what we can do as curators, and both you at home, is we can slow it down as much as we possibly can, and that's really what we're doing. So the family heirlooms that you have at your house can fall under the umbrella of your protection as you're caretaking them for the next generation. So as I said, light is a big thing. You want to try to keep it away as far away from light as possible. The other one is humidity, and you know, relative humidity. The thing about humidity and affecting artifacts and sort of the moisture in the air is the key is consistency. It's better to have one, you know, a good relative humidity is 54 RH, but you want to, instead of having it go from one extreme to the other, it's better to have it, you know, either higher or above or above that level consistently. And what that means is a good way to store your artifacts is in the house proper. What do I mean by that? Well, that means do not put it into the attic, or don't put it into the basement where there's going to be higher fluctuations of humidity and the control isn't as good. Especially the attic. The attic's going to be flying all over the place, right? It's going to, you know, in the summertime, it's going to go way, way high, and then the wintertime it's going to come down with temperature. And this is talking about temperature as well as relative humidity. So keep your artifacts, keep your family heirlooms in the house proper, where, you know, usually, typically, most houses these days are air conditioned, right? Maybe they have a little bit, some kind of a filtration system. it's not going to be, it's not going to be perfect probably, but it's going to be a lot better than sticking it up in the attic where, the temperature is going to go crazy and going to go wild. So what you want to do is you want to stick it into a closet in the house proper. Maybe there's one to the side of your bedroom or, the side of the dining room or something that you can put it in. And then, so what exactly do you put the artifact in? Well, it depends on the artifact. A lot of folks these days, they're telling me that they're doing scrapbooking or they're looking through old letters and things like that. Just some basic tips about that. With old letters, the main thing is you want to keep them flat, okay? If they're folded, you generally want to not keep them crumpled up or rolled or folded like that. You want to flatten them out if you can. Now, having said that, there are some maybe letters that are just beyond the ability to sort of to unfold. That's a shame. But generally, if you can, you'll take them out and flatten them out. Remove, if you can, any staples, okay? Any old staples like that. Even if you think they might be stainless steel staples, they probably are not. Remove them anyway. Staples, they can tend to rust and they can tend to, cause a little bit of a havoc. And what will happen is you'll see on the letter, you'll see that, little pieces of the staple will be on the side and everything will look fine. And then in a few years, the rust will start to, migrate over to the paper. So remove any of that stuff. Any old notes that you have in the letter itself, take them out and store it separately, and then you can get these inert archival material folders from a number of different places. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Amazon sells them now. Just a really quick sip. They're not terribly expensive. They're made out of inert material, like I said, so they're going to be safe for any archival materials that you might have. If you have an old letter and you put it in here, it's not going to yellow it. It's not going to off-gas onto it and create a problem. So, store it in something like this. And like I said, another good place to get or talk to about this is there's a lot of frame shops these days that are really archival savvy now. That wasn't the case maybe 20 years ago, but these days a lot of frame places are up on the latest things, and maybe they can give you some direction on where to buy. But really, just Google it. Just Google archival folders and put them in here. And then what you can do, like say you have a two-piece letter, right? Okay, you have a letter with two sheets on it. Whenever you store it in here, instead of putting it right on top of each other, the same places that sell these, they also sell sheets of inert paper that you can put in between these. They're specifically archival paper. And so go ahead and put them in between each page. Okay, it sounds really nerdy, but if you have a really cool old letter from World War II that maybe the grandparents wrote, it's worth it, right? Those are your treasures. That's your history. So I think it's worth it. Go ahead and each individual letter, put them on there. And then, of course, you can label it. Whenever you label, I suggest labeling with pencil, because pencil lasts a lot longer usually than pen does, the graphite on there. It sounds counterintuitive, but some inks will fade a little more, but the graphite actually can last a good while. So, like I said, keep the letter flat, and then you put it in the folder, and then you take the folder, and if you can, this may be beyond what you want to do, but if you can, there's actually archival boxes. So you can actually go out and from the same places, same sources, Gaylord is one, and then I think Amazon now sells them too, so you can just go on there. Go ahead and get yourself an archival box. And the reason for that is because a regular cardboard box, if worse comes to worse, okay, but it's better to have one that's inert, like I said, that's not going to off-gas, and it's not going to cause any kind of problems. Once you get an archival box, your worries are a lot less than they would be if there was a cardboard box. Some of these old cardboard boxes, they have prints on there, they have inks that may affect the artifact, and this is true for any artifact, but really, I'm talking specifically about letters now. A lot of people are doing scrapbooking and stuff these days. So go ahead and put them in there, and you can, there's actually also dividers you can keep so that it won't fold them down and it won't, crumple it up. Try to keep it as flat as you can. You can, if you wanted to store them this way, but, a lot of places will store them kind of going that way, and then keeping a pressure on it so that it doesn't fall down and it doesn't curve and do all that stuff. So like I said, that's getting pretty particular and pretty maybe that's a little bit more than you want to do, but I'm telling you, you'll thank yourself, because once you can do that, then you won't have to worry about it anymore. They're safe. And like I said, then you take that box and you store it in the house proper. Do not put it in the attic or don't put it in the basement unless your basement is super, super well regulated. And a lot of people don't have basements anyway, so that's okay. Store it in your closet. And like I said, sure, maybe it's not a completely HVAC controlled Smithsonian system, but it's not bad. I mean, usually the temperature is going to be more or less around where you want it. A lot of people, they keep their houses somewhere in between 70 or 67 and 72 degrees, maybe somewhere in there. So that's going to be good, and it's not going to fluctuate too terribly. So keep it in a closet in your house, in the house proper, is really not. It's not that bad. It's better than nothing, and it's definitely not that bad. Okay, so more nerd stuff. So if you have an artifact that's not, another thing that people are asking about scrapbooking, there's actually the same places that sell the archival folders. They also sell archival scrapbook books, and it's exactly what you think it is. It's all safe, and it's friendly to preserving papers and things like that. So if you have an artifact itself, say you have an old shoe or old clothes. A lot of people, they wonder about like a really good dress or something, like maybe they have a wedding dress from back in the day. The best thing to do when storing clothing and shoes and things like that is to store it in the way that it was meant to be worn. Does that make sense? For example, okay, let me see if I can pull this out here. Where these shoes that I've been showing you, this one here, why is that in there? Why is that thing sticking in there? Well, the reason it's sticking in there is because it's filling out the form, right? It's filling out the form of like sort of mimicking that where the foot might have been and what the foot might have been doing. So this is sort of a mimic of what that was. So, and this applies to pretty much most clothing, most costume material that you might have. So if you have an old wedding dress, it could be a little bit problematic, right? Are you going to store it on a mannequin, in your house? Probably not. But what you can do is, if you can get these inert materials, again, like I said, from the archival places. There's different, polyester fibers and things like that, different foams that you can get that fill out the material. There's cottons that you can get, so these archival cottons that don't have any dye or anything like that, or any wash jobs on them. And what you can do is you can start stuffing out as much as you can, whatever, say you have an old shirt and you want to fill it out if you can before you store it into the chest or in the closet, and try to get it so that it looks as close as it can to a human form. Again, that may be impossible for you to do, but what you can do is you can try to stick it in so that it fills out the creases. Does that make sense? It's going to fill out the folds that are actually on there, because the folds in the clothing is what really damages. And here, I'll show you this. This is an ice skate, okay, that belonged to the Monroe's children. Okay, so this is an ice skate, and this looks really weird, like this is all stuffed in there, right? But what we're doing is we're trying to keep this leather piece from folding in and from creating a crease on the inside. And you can see, if I could show you, you can see just a little bit where there was a little bit of a problem previously where maybe there were some folds going on, and it started creating that red rot, right? Red rot is your enemy on leather. So what we're doing is we're filling that out, even this little piece, to try to keep it as close to an original shape as you possibly can. That may be impossible for what you want to do with your house and maybe your storage capacity. Okay, that's fine. But what you can do is you can, again, keep those creases out if you can. Like the old dress, you don't want to roll it up and throw it in there. Obviously, most people don't crumple it up anyway. But the old dress might have a place where it's folded over like that and it's really creased in. If you can, get these inert materials and put it in there and just sort of try to round out those creases, if that makes sense. There are some artifacts that are going to do better than others that you may not have to worry as much about. Particularly ceramics tend to do a little bit better with shape and everything. But with ceramics, if you want to store them, let me see if I can pull out. Okay. Well, actually, I'll show you this instead. This isn't a ceramic piece, but the theory applies. What are we doing here? So we have it in a box, right? We have it in an archival box, but we also have this buffer of this foam here, right? This buffer that's going on here. And this helps it from, if there's any movement in the house, maybe you live in a place that has a lot of earthquakes or something like that. If there's any movement, then, that helps to keep it from buffering around. So if you have old pieces that are valuable to you, invest in and go on the Gaylord or any of these other websites and just look at the materials for storing. These are all going to be good. These are like spongy and they can help and they're inert. And so you want to keep it from, moving around and having too much movement on the inside. The other thing people wonder about, and what you don't want to do generally, is you don't want to seal something in completely. Okay. What do I mean by that? Well, if you have, so you have a nice closet and, it's in the house proper and everything is right. But, the tendency would be, okay, I want to take this old pair of shoes and I want to seal them up completely, wrap them all like super, and then seal them so that no air at all gets through. You generally want to stay away from that if you can. You want to buffer it and you want to protect it and you want to put the proper archival stuff around it, but you don't want to seal completely because sometimes that can create little microclimates inside the sealant and maybe it'll promote mold growth and things like that. You want to try to have a tiny bit of airflow within a lot of these, just to sort of prevent that from happening. And that will happen sometimes. You see old seals that, of some old artifact and it's been in there too long and maybe it's promoting some kind of microclimate in there. And so you want to stay away from that if you can. The other thing people ask about is like, okay, well, what do I do as far as, say I have an old furniture piece, I have an old table and everything, and it's looking really dry. What do I want to do? Do I want to cover it in different coats and everything like that? The default thing for you to do is to follow the basics. Okay. There's a lot of like sort of oils and things out there they say to cover, furniture pieces and stuff like that with. I would generally stay away from that and more follow the basics. Lighting, try to keep it away from that. Temperature fluctuations, try to keep it from going extreme temperature fluctuations, and relative humidity, things like that. If you on your tables, if you have a piece of cloth that you're not really sure of the origin on, maybe not put it on top of that, because what will happen will start transferring some of its chemicals onto the old piece of furniture, things like that. So really, you want to sort of cover your basics that way. Again, there's not a magic pill, there's not a magic sort of energy beam that comes down and protects it. It's just sort of trying to keep it as slowing down the process as much as you can when you can. Anyway, I'm probably going on a little bit too long here. So let me review. One, I wanted to showing you this old piece of flatware that belonged to James Monroe. These are dessert piece. This is sterling silver with the mother of pearl handle that's on there. And a lot of people wonder, would this have been used in the White House? Well, there's that wonderful thing, a family tradition says it used in the White House. Really, this would have been the right quality to use. So it's definitely possible it could have been used in the White House. And it's definitely owned by James Monroe. So that was definitely a possibility. And then I'll show you the fork part of it here. So here's the fork, the sterling silver fork with the mother of pearl. And then I was just talking about about storing some of your family heirlooms, and I can talk a little bit more next week about that, and maybe next week I could talk a little bit about how to tell the differences between pearls and fake pearls and ivories and things like that. But some of the basics with preserving family heirlooms, especially in this time, a lot of people are scrapbooking and looking through old letters. Flatten the letters out if you can. Remove staples. Remove any extraneous objects. If you can, each separate page of the paper, put archival paper in between and then store them flat, and then put it, if you can, into an archival box and store that into the house proper. And what I mean by that is don't go into the attic or into the basement. And the same thing with other artifacts, especially clothing that people are interested in. Try to fill in the clothing with you can with some of these inert materials, and that the purpose of that is to keep the creases out and to keep it from folding in on itself. And then again, store it. You can have these cotton, these inert cotton. There's unbuffered tissue paper that you can also get from the museum supply stores or in the other stores, and keep those in there. And those are some basics. I can go over some more stuff next week, but I don't want to go too long here. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I really appreciate it. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to contact us. I'm on my email's on the webpage and on James Monroe Museum webpage. Any questions that you have, feel free. Thank you so much for joining, and we will see you next time. Okay.